Welcome to another episode of The Artsy Raven, a show about writing and publishing with your host, J.F. Garrard.
Welcome to another episode of The Artsy Raven. Today our special guest is Philip Caputo. Philip was born in Chicago in 1941 and educated at Purdue and Loyola Universities. After graduating in 1964, he served in the U.S. Marine Corps for 3 years, including a 16-month tour of duty in Vietnam. In addition to Memory and Desire, he has written 17 books, among them 3 memoirs, 10 works of fiction, and 4 general nonfiction. His first book, A Rumor of War, is considered a classic of war literature. It has been published in 15 languages and has sold more than 1.5 million copies. A Pulitzer Prize winning journalist, Caputo has written dozens of articles in major magazines, op-ed pieces, and reviews for publications across the United States, including the New York Times, National Geographic, and the Chicago Tribune. He lives in Norwalk, Connecticut, and Patagonia, Arizona. So welcome, Philip.
Why, thank you very much.
So can you tell us a little bit about all these experience you had and why you decided to become a writer?
Well, I don't think I decided to become a writer in the same sense, say, that someone decides to become a doctor or a lawyer. In other words, it almost seems like a calling, like a vocation that comes from somewhere other than myself that I was compelled to answer. I just, I could not imagine myself doing anything else. And I still can't at my age of 84.
Oh, so were you a journalist before you went into the Marine Corps?
No.
Okay,
I went in straight out of school.
okay. And so what sort of things did you do during your stint there?
In the Marine Corps, you mean?
Hmm.
I was a rifle platoon commander in Vietnam. I had a platoon of riflemen, and then later on, I was a company commander when I got transferred back to the States. A platoon is about 35 or 40 individuals, and a company is about 180 or 200.
What, I mean, I've never been a soldier, so I can't
Oh,
imagine
yeah.
what it's like um being a soldier, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons I wrote A Rumor of War was to allow people like yourself to experience as much as you can on a printed page what it's like to be a soldier, especially in combat or in war. And that's that's one of the reasons I wrote
Okay. And how long did it take you to write that?
it. Actually, a very long time. I started it way back when I got discharged. I think it was in 1967. And then I put it aside for literally for years, picked it up again, put it aside. Altogether, it was 12 years before I finished it.
Wow. Have any of your colleagues in the Marine Corps read it? Like, did you get any feedback from them?
M- Oh, yeah, my goodness, a lot of it. Uh, I uh, I can't even recall how many, but I recall that it was like 99% positive, the response to it. Because I tried to be very honest to the experience. I tried to get across not only what it was like day to day or physically, but also emotionally and psychologically.
And then when did you become a journalist?
Well, after I was discharged, as I said, I had gone off to Europe for a while to try to start this book, and then after about 4 months over there, I realized I was getting nowhere, and I came back to the States and got a job as an advertising copywriter for the Minnesota Mining and Manufacturing Company, 3M. And I didn't care for that very much. And I started to apply to various newspapers around the country. And I was very lucky in that a very big newspaper known as the Chicago Tribune
Mm,
um, hired me straight off the bat. And and that's when I became a journalist.
okay. And you won a Pulitzer for one of your stories.
Yeah, it was an investigative uh, journalism that I did. Uh, 19. Boy, I'm old enough that I'm forgetting when this took place. 1971 or 72. Anyway, on vote fraud in Chicago, it was. I was part of an investigative team, and the Pulitzer went to all of us, all four of us. But I was told we could consider ourselves individually Pulitzer winners, and so I
Mhm.
do.
Like, did it change anything? Like, did it change how you wrote in the future?
No, not really. It's a wonderful honor to have, but in the end, like we used to say in the newspaper business, you're only as good as your last story, and so
Ah,
you
yeah.
you can't trade on having won an important journalistic or literary prize for that matter forever.
Now, you write memoirs and fiction and nonfiction. So,
Yeah.
mm, I guess when you start a book, how do you decide what you're going to write?
Oh man, that's some question because I have I have no idea. I mean, there's no process involved. Is that sometimes an idea occurs to me, and sometimes it doesn't.
Hmm.
When it occurs to me, I'll try to develop it into something. But quite often I fail at that. I've got at least three or four books that I started and got well into, thousands of words into it, and realized that they weren't going anywhere. So I had to drop it. But there's no decision made. It just seems to be something that comes from outside of myself. I'm trying not to sound mystical about all this, but that's how it strikes me.
Like, have you developed any writing habits that help you write? Like, for some people, it's actually a very difficult thing to do, sit down and write.
Yeah, it's difficult for me. In the recent past, that is to say, earlier in my career and up to maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I used to have a pretty stringent schedule. I would write uh, in the mornings for 5 or 6 hours. Um, Sometimes, if I was really going on a book or I was really on a deadline, I would write for far longer than that. Lately, though, I probably, because of my age and waning mental powers as well as physical powers, I don't think I work much more than about 2 or 3 hours a day, and not every day the way I used
Hmm.
to.
Are you retired now, or?
No, no,
Oh,
no, no.
okay.
I just published this book of short stories called Wandering Souls. It's out, book of short stories. It's out uh, now, just now this week, and I am working on another novel, which will may be my last one.
Okay. Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about Wandering Souls and what's in the collection of stories?
Yeah, it was one of those things that I would get an idea for a short story and I would work on it and I'd write it till it was more or less the way I liked it, and eventually over a period of several years actually, I realized I had enough put together to make a book out of them, and that they were thematically linked in the sense they're about people who find themselves in exotic situations or exotic places or both. And that, even though these stories all take place in different parts of the world and have different plots and characters, of course, they nevertheless are linked by that one underlying theme.
Now, without giving too much away, do you have a favorite story in the book?
Do I have a favorite story? Well, probably the lead story, which is it's the longest story. It's almost a short novel. It's a novella almost. Um, I think that's my favorite one. It's about a man who was a veteran of the Vietnam War who is returns to Vietnam with one of these teams that investigate missing in action soldiers because someone in his outfit was missing in action, and he joins one of these teams to see if they can find out what happened to this MIA, and the story develops from there, and he makes some discoveries that are quite surprising, even shocking to him.
Okay, okay.
I won't give away any more than that.
All right. Now, did any personal experiences serve as inspiration for any of these stories?
I'm sorry.
Did any
Any?
did any personal experiences serve as an
Oh,
inspiration?
mm, let me think. Yeah, there's one story that takes place in Africa that's kind of semi-autobiographical or experiences that I'd had actually while on an assignment for National Geographic magazine. And let me think some others. Oh, and then the last story, which actually does not have an exotic location, it's the state of Indiana.
Oh,
But it's a weird situation, and that's kind of derives from a personal experience that I had.
okay. Now, does writing short story differ from writing novels or memoirs? Like, do you think of them
Mm.
as different products or different process that you use, or?
Well, it's definitely different in the sense that there's usually a single theme and maybe one main character to a short story and one plot
Mhm.
line or narrative line compared to a novel. So you have to stick with that. If it starts to spread all over the place, it's either a bad short story or it's a novel. Uh, and yeah, I'd say that it's a very different experience. It's also a little more pleasant
Hmm.
than writing a novel because a novel can take years sometimes to write, and you get kind of tired of living with it after a while. Whereas a short story, you write the story in maybe a few weeks. I've heard of people that can write one overnight,
Yeah.
and it's done.
Mhm. Now, were there any particular challenges when you were working on this?
Mm. Yeah, well, the challenges that I've always had. I wrote one other collection of short stories. It actually takes place in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, um, and I had the same problem then that I did with this one, and that is making these invented situations and invented characters plausible and real. That's that's always been difficult for me to do.
Yeah, like finding a way for the readers to connect.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's a good way to put it.
Now, do you have any advice to give emerging writers that want to be a writer?
Yeah, well, my standard piece of advice, I've given it for years, and I think it's still valid, is that if you want to be a writer, you probably will not become one. But if you are compelled to be a writer, you will.
Okay.
And that's about the only advice I can give. It's like I said, it's not a profession. It is a calling, and if you are called to it, you will eventually become one. But the only thing you can do, however, is to write. You've got the only way to learn how to write is to write. I'm not a fan of all of these um, fine arts programs, these Masters of Fine Art programs at various universities. Uh, the only way I would say that I could favor them is that they might give you time to work on something uh, profitably, but otherwise, the only thing you can do is that you keep writing and keep submitting, and that persistence will eventually develop and perfect your talent. It is to be hoped. There's no guarantee that it will, but that's the only way to do it.
Okay. So, Philip, you're going to do a reading for us. So, please give us a bit of context and then you can start.
Well, I thought I'd just read from the beginning of that first story, which is called "Wandering Souls." That's the one I had mentioned earlier that takes place in contemporary Vietnam and involves this veteran who joins this group that is trying to find out what happened to a missing in action soldier. And Wandering Souls, the title comes from a Vietnamese religious belief or myth, if you will, that people who die violently, usually, or actually not even violently, but people who die and whose remains are not honored in the usually in the family altar, or their ashes are not placed in the family altar, become wandering souls. They start to wander around the world like ghosts,
Yeah.
uh, and they can't rest until someone performs these proper rituals. So that's what this is. That's where the title comes from.
Okay.
So, how long would you like me to read for, by the way?
You can read for about 10 minutes. I think the Zoom will give us
Okay.
a warning eventually.
Okay. All right. So I'll just start with the start of the story.
Okay.
Wandering souls, as I said. Alone in the house, Delia was out meeting with her book group. I'd been watching a 60-minute segment about POWs and MIAs. Anderson Cooper was interviewing a New Jersey woman from Riverside, Barbara Lindstrom, still grieving for her older brother, killed in action in 1969. His remains never recovered. His name, Paul Salerno, didn't register for 2 or 3 seconds. 40 years had gone by, but when it did, goosebumps scampered up my neck and across my scalp. When I think about him, his body lying out there in the jungle, 10,000 miles away, it tortures me to this day, Barbara told Cooper. It tortured our parents all their lives. Now they're gone. She and Paul had been very close, she went on, closer than most brothers and sisters. Now and then, he appeared to her in a dream, the same dream over and over. He was in an enclosure that looked like a jail cell, and though he didn't utter a sound, she sensed that he was pleading with her to set him free. The resemblance between the image in her dream and what I had seen with my own eyes was uncanny. When the segment ended,
I went into my attic, opened a footlocker with my name and Army serial number stenciled on its lid, and found the notebook under a pile of musty uniforms. It was in a plastic case. I thumbed through the pages and found the one I was looking for, stained by mildew, but the names and map coordinates were still legible. Why not, I thought. I had the time, an abundance of time, having taken early retirement from the hospital where I had been a CT and X-ray technician. Then, dwelling on Barbara Lindstrom's anguish, a wave of shame washed over me, and why hardened into, "You must." I was the one who had spotted them under the banyan tree, slumped against the trunk, facing out through the mazed prop roots like captives in a cage. Our squad had been on patrol when we stumbled across the bodies of 3 Americans lying on the trail in a row, all shot multiple times. Ambushed, we figured, and hadn't had the chance to return fire. We found no brass underwear anywhere near them. They wore bush hats instead of helmets and camouflage uniforms, without flak vests or unit patches, indicating that they belonged to some sneaky reconnaissance commando outfit, which might have explained why no one told us another unit was operating in the area. They hadn't been sneaky enough, it seemed. Their rifles and magazines were missing, probably taken by the men who had killed them. With bandanas covering our mouths and noses, we wrapped them in their ponchos. This wasn't easy. They had been dead for at least a day and a night and were stiff as stone statues. The stench made our eyes water. It seemed to burn our skin, an invisible methane flame. The squad leader, Sergeant Sanchez, split us up into 2-man teams and told us to check out the area for more KIAs, or, which was very doubtful, any wounded survivors. I teamed up with him. We moved off the trail through a towering jungle, canopied by branches woven like a basket. The banyan caught my eye at first because it was so huge, with its long, thick, horizontal branches, dripping aerial roots that sank deep into the ground. And in one of those nooks, I saw something that did not look like it belonged there. I tapped Sanchez on the shoulder and pointed, and we crept up to the tree cautiously for a closer look. "What the fuck? What the fuck?" he said. 2 men, bloated and blue, sat by side in the shadowed space. Dried blood darkened their uniforms, the same as the one worn by the dead on the trail. The one on the left, had been shot through the chest, the other in the head. A good part of it had been blown away. His own mother would not have recognized him. Sanchez indulged in some forensics, speculating that the pair had survived the ambush, led into the forest, and somehow squeezed into the cell-like enclosure, maybe to make a last stand, to put a heroic spin on things, but more likely to hide. The enemy must have spotted them, just as I had, and sprayed them with rifle fire. I made sure not to think about what it would have been like to die that way, trapped in what they must have hoped would be a refuge. Sanchez frowned, looking at the roots, some as big around as a man's leg. The corpses would be as rigid as the others. No way we could snake in there and pull them out of that maze, the sergeant said. No way we would want to, even if it were possible. In that cramped space, we would be forced into an appalling intimacy with their decomposing flesh. "Somebody's going to have to come in with chainsaws or axes and cut them out," he said. And I think I'll leave it at there.
Oh, thank you
Hello?
very much, Philip. Hello?
Okay.
Hello? Okay,
Oh,
so I had muted
all right.
myself. But oh my goodness. I mean, listening to you, I mean, do you ever get nightmares about what happened in the past?
I used to long time ago, but I've since gotten over. After I just realized that it's been 60 years, 60,
Oh, wow.
since I was in Vietnam. So that would be like if you had been in the American Civil War and this was 1926, you know. So it was a long, long time ago. But when I first got back, and for quite a while after that, I used to have some pretty bad dreams. Yeah.
Have you been back to Vietnam since?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Because
I
people keep
made.
telling me to go there to be a tourist, but I have not.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's a wonderful country to visit, and it's quite beautiful.
Yes.
Um, and so I would urge you to go ahead and do it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much once again for spending time with us. The Artsy Raven is produced by Dark Helix Press. Introduction voiceover by Chris Gorman. Music by Tim Moore. Please access your bonus content on the Patreon website. Thank you very much for listening, and please stay safe.